Hello and welcome to another Dragon Ball FighterZ video. Today, TGN Anime presents a character profile for Android 17. The MVP of the Tournament of Power, who just wanted to go on a cruise, is an incredibly unique addition to the Dragon Ball FighterZ roster. His high damage and high mobility will make him a real threat to deal with, so let's get started by looking at some of his unique normals. 17's got a low hitting down light, which is always great, good for empty jumps, good for pokes on block, and a lot of people are always looking for that low light when buying a new character, so I'm happy to announce that yes, 17 has got a low light. But his down medium is actually pretty bad. Very low range on it, you'll likely whiff it a couple of times when you first pick up this character and get used to its moveset, because this low mid is pretty damn short. To make up for that, he's got an awesome move with down forward heavy, which is this sliding kick. This gives 17 a third low attack in a block string, and it's also a neat neutral tool thanks to its range. Because it's a heavy attack, you'll need to follow this up with another heavy like a 5 or 2H, or a special attack, which we're gonna look at in a little bit. Finally, he's got some good key blasts on the ground, good for zoning or locking down an opponent before you call in an assist. In the air though, they have a pretty steep angle. You'll need to be in a specific position for these to hit, and even if you land a hit, 17 has a pretty long recovery after reaching the ground, which makes this not as useful as some 17 players would like. Moving on to his specials, let's start with something simple, because 17 specials get complex very fast. Some of his special moves just have too many variants, which is great because this means he has a lot of options, but on the other hand, it sucks to explain it all in a video. So let's start simple with Power Blitz. By pressing down and the special button, 17 will charge up this attack. If you do it again, 17 will then unleash the actual attack, the Power Blitz. To charge it up, you have to be on the ground. If you're close enough to the opponent, you'll actually hit them, so feel free to include this in combos or block strings. And then to unleash the attack, you can be either on the ground or in the air. There's only one slight difference, which is the first key blast of this attack. If you do the aerial version, the first key blast will be angled slightly upwards, while the grounded version throws both key blasts at the ground. Now, if these key blasts connect with the enemy, you have a guaranteed sliding knockdown. So from a vanish, if you have this attack charged up, 17 can actually get a sliding knockdown pretty easily, which is always an amazing tool to have. Next up, we have Acrobatic Assault with quarter circle forwards or quarter circle backwards and the special button. This is the move where 17 jumps into a wall and jumps back into the middle of the screen. The quarter circle forward version crosses up to the enemy's side, and the quarter circle backwards version stays on the same side. After 17 reaches the wall with this move, you can cancel it at any time and any way you'd like. You can do super dashes, you can do overhead attacks, any button you want to press, except for movement options like double jumping or air dashing. Now, this move does have some recovery when he reaches the ground, so if 17 wants to go for a low, maybe it won't come out as fast as you'd like, but the cross up is pretty fast though. I mean, 17 has to reach the wall and come back, so it may look slow, but as soon as you're on the other side, if you have a fast assist, the opponent needs to worry about blocking them right away. Even in the corner, opponents need to be worried about cross ups, because 17 can steal the corner away with a fast assist. If you're far away from the opponent, the quarter circle backwards version won't put you that close to the opponent. The quarter circle forwards will, but it takes a long time for 17 to reach the opponent, so you either cover it with an assist, or this will be a very predictable and unsafe way of approaching your target. I can see the temptation is just to use this all the time in neutral, but it's not as good of a neutral tool as it first appears to be. Defensively though, it's a tool that can be used to reposition yourself, to get out of a tough spot and gain the upper hand. And finally, we're gonna tackle both of his attack specials at the same time. We've got Axel Driver with quarter circle forwards and an attack button, and Finishing Driver with quarter circle backwards and an attack button. The difference between these two is that the quarter circle forwards just kind of attacks right away, and the quarter circle backwards version has 17 first stepping back before attacking, which means you can't just naturally combo into the quarter circle backwards version, but you can easily go into the quarter circle forwards version of his driver special. Everything else between these two versions works pretty much the same, because from here you can actually follow up with a ton of attacks, and I'm gonna tell you exactly how to follow up, but first some details about the simple activation. So the light attack version has less range than the medium attack version, but it's slightly faster. Both can be put into combos, but when it comes to block strings, they both have a gap, so they're vulnerable to reflect. Then again, you will have some options to bait out the reflect. One of them is using the quarter circle backwards version, which has 17 stepping back first, giving the opponent enough time to whiff that reflect and you punishing him right away. There are a ton of other options for baiting out reflects, and I'll note them as we move forward. And then the heavy attack version of the driver crosses up to the enemy's back, and you can follow up with attacks just as you would with the light or medium versions. Finally, for the medium and the heavy attack versions, you have one extra property, which is if you hold down the attack button, you will actually fake this move. You will just charge forward or cross up to the enemy's back and not attack. This reminds me a little bit of Trunks' fake out, which is a great move when covered by an assist. It can make for some very, very scary block strings. And also, great reflect bait. Alright, let's talk about the possible follow-ups. After you start this move, you can just mash to follow up. 17 will just continue attacking, but you will always do this one sequence, and you don't want to do that because you can actually manually select the attacks you want to do. So instead of being predictable and just mashing the button after doing the driver, I recommend getting used to selecting a couple of options at least. Otherwise, your block strings are just going to be super easy to punish. So after you start the move, if you press the light or medium attack buttons, it just follows up with the normal attack. If you hold forward and press one of those buttons, he goes into an overhead, and if you hold down and one of those buttons, 17 does a low attack. Finally, if you hold back and one of those attack buttons, 17 will do a fake out where he jumps up, descends, making it look like he's going for an overhead, but then he doesn't, so that's good for following up with a low or, again, baiting out a reflect or something like that. You've got all of these options just by holding a direction and then pressing either the light or medium attack buttons. And you can chain them in any way you want. In a block string, there is a gap for the overhead, but if you play it differently every time, then it becomes hard to see coming, since this string is incredibly fast even on block. But we're actually not done with the options you have, because then you have even more options with the special and the heavy attack buttons. So pressing the special button activates the barrier, which if the opponent attacks you, tries to punish you, it absorbs their damage into meter and gives you a free punish afterwards. If you press the heavy attack button, you spend a bar of meter, but the barrier activates a lot faster. You press the heavy attack button again and you also throw a follow-up key blast. This doesn't spend a second bar, you just spend one for the fast activation of the barrier. So if you want the key blast, just press the heavy attack button twice for this option. You can put this move in the middle of your axle string if you want, since the activation of the barrier is so fast. It even causes a wall bounce, and 17 can follow it up on his own if he's near a wall, if he's in the corner. From the assist position, this is also 17's move. He doesn't cause a wall bounce from the assist position, but he can absorb damage and then punish with that short range key blast, which can be good for some extensions, but since the barrier comes first, the damage takes a while to come out, making this a slow assist, and also it doesn't have a lot of range, so its use will be very situational. The barrier itself also lasts a lot less than Android 18's, which is gonna make it tough to react and punish an opponent as well. Overall, I don't think it's that great of an assist. It's got some situational uses, but definitely not his strongest point. Finally, if you hold down on the D-pad and the special button, he'll do the power blitz. 17 can charge it or launch it, just depends on whether or not you had it charged before. There's a lot of options from these driver moves, and that makes them great for mix-ups, but also good tools for combos as they deal some very good damage. Moving on to his super, 17 has 3 of them, 2 level 1 supers and a level 3. Let's start with the first level 1. While on the ground, quarter circle forward and the right bumper or trigger gives you endgame. 17 crosses up to the opponent's back and hits him from behind where he starts the super. Since this is a teleport, it can reach the enemy anywhere on the ground, but if the enemy is in the air, the teleport will whiff. Also, this level 1 switches sides, so keep that in mind, because if you use it in the corner, you are going to lose the corner. When following up another character's super, this is also the one 17 will use, and hey, you will switch sides once again, so keep that in mind when DHCing for 17. And also, since you have 2 level 1 supers at your disposal, we did some damage comparison, and if you're going for damage, out of the 2 level 1 supers he has, this is the one that deals the most damage, but then again, it can cost you the corner. While in the air, quarter circle forward and the right bumper or trigger gives you barrier explosion. 17 will fly at the opponent surrounded by a barrier and will activate the super upon hit. There's not a lot of invisibility to this level 1. I mean, it does go through most attacks, but since the character came out at the same time as Cooler, maybe I was expecting him to go through supers as well, since he's got a freaking barrier surrounding his body. But no, it's not immune to other supers. It is immune to a lot of other moves though. Finally, his level 3 works both on the ground and in the air. Super electric strike with quarter circle backwards and the right bumper or trigger. It's a full screen projectile that gives 17 a very good Oki in the corner. Mid screen, it does launch the opponent kind of far, so the Oki isn't that good. And also, if you're up too high in the air, the opponent doesn't go into a hard knockdown. They will just tech. So make sure you do it close to the ground if you want that pressure afterwards. As far as auto combos go, this is what happens when you press the light attack button. And then when you press the medium attack button, he does this. And now that we know his moves, let's talk about how to use them. And honestly, I don't know what else to say because I feel like we went so in depth with each ability that most of the tips already came out naturally. But overall, I think 17 will be a character that will struggle a little bit in neutral, because while the Acrobatic Assault looks like an amazing tool for engaging the enemy, it is a bit slow, so if you're at a distance, you're gonna have trouble getting in close, which in the end, from my point of view, Acrobatic Assault is gonna be more of a defensive maneuver, used to get you out of a tough spot, or something that's just gonna kind of replace the Super Dash while giving you some more mix-up abilities. Because unless you're using it with assists, it's just heavily punishable, or it's gonna leave you in a vulnerable position where you're gonna have to start blocking. Now, with assists, this ability can be very scary, and 17 in general with assists can be an incredibly strong point character. You've got those key blasts from a distance, which are really good for locking down a character, and while using assists to cover your driver abilities or Acrobatic Assault, 17 can get in very, very fast. And once he gets in close, watch out for 17, because he's got the damage and the mix-up potential of a top-tier character. The number of options on his driver ability alone is straight up scary. It's scary to block because he's got a very fast high-low mix-up, and it's hard to tell when an opening is coming since he can just fake out and restart his whole block string anytime he feels like it. 17 block strings with assists are amongst the scariest block strings this game has to offer, so if you're planning on maining 17, take it to the lab and just practice a few different combinations of his driver abilities, because this is mix-up made easy. It is incredibly easy to mix up the opponent just using a couple of different driver strings. Use fakes covered by assists, use variations on high-low mix-ups with different timings, and you'll find that opening up an opponent is going to be pretty easy. And from there, dealing damage with 17 can be devastating for the opponent. Thank you for watching another character breakdown. Cooler is up next, but in the meantime, every other character can be found on the playlist up there. If you like these videos, you're gonna love what we do behind the scenes. Head over to Patreon and join this amazing community, as these top supporters have done already. But as always, thank you very much for watching. My name is Globku, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.